Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Zenaton, and welcome to today's video for Legends of Runeterra. Today's video is going to be a type of video I like to do every time we get new cards in the game. I'm going to be going over 5 decks that are using the new cards that I think have some potential in them. Don't get me wrong, I don't think these are all tier 1 decks. These are mostly decks that I think are decently strong, have something going for them, and with a little more refinement can actually be somewhat meta. Um, but I'm not saying these are the best decks. In all honesty, the best deck in the format could actually use no new cards. But this is more for people who want to play with some of the new cards, but aren't necessarily that good at deck building, or they're just lazy and don't want to try to deck build. There's no shame in it. So I've got 5 pretty sweet decks here for you. I tried to get a deck that at least one deck for each of the champions, and I tried to get a deck for every single archetype except for combo, I think. But yeah, I believe I have at least one control, one aggro, and one mid-range deck. So a little bit for everyone. Anyway, let's go and look at all 5 of these decks. We'll go one by one. First up, we got a deck that I really like, and it's probably going to be one of the decks I play a lot of and test out a lot of. We're looking at Gnar Lux. Gnar Lux is basically the evolution of Lux Shellfolk. Lux Shellfolk basically started out as Poppy Lux Shellfolk. Poppy got nerfed, and since Poppy doesn't hit most things anymore, we took out Poppy and we're pretty much just mono Lux, occasionally putting in things like Heimerdingers or J4s, but they never really felt good. So we're starting with this because not that many new cards. If you just want to play with a couple new cards but want something that's familiar, well, we got Shellfolk for you. A lot of people love Shellfolk decks. Here you go. Why are we playing Gnar, though? Couple of reasons. One, Gnar's just busted. Like, I feel like that's reason number one. Gnar just slots into that 4-mana slot so well that Poppy used to take up. The Poke Sticks are so good, synergizes well with Lux as well, cycles through the deck as well, so pretty good. The only other new card in this deck, though, that we have is Face Sprout. We could probably play even more Face Sprouts if you wanted. Face Sprout just works really well with Curious Shellfolk. It's just a fairly solid card. Use it to get either just late game stuff, early game Fae, like Flower Child if you just need blockers, healers like Tasty Fae Folk if you want healers. It's pretty good overall. Definitely some room to tune this deck to your taste. You can add in, for example, Radiant Guardians if you want lifesteal and you don't want to just rely on Face Sprout giving you lifesteal. You can definitely do that. Another card I kind of like in this deck that's not in this deck though, but I think has potential in Lux decks is Yordle Portal. Yordle Portal is basically half of a Lux Final Spark. It gives you another Yordle on board right away, and if you have a Shellfolk out, you get that Yordle in your hand as well. Pretty strong. Shield of Durand is also pretty good. Shield of Durand keeps your Gnars, your Luxes, your Shellfolks safe. And another card you could consider running is Durand Sculptor. For example, you could cut maybe, like if we wanted to play Durand Sculptor, what would I cut? It's a tough question because this deck's not, it doesn't have that many free slots, but you could potentially cut 2 Telescopes for 2 Durand Sculptors, maybe even the Face Sprout if you want a 3rd Sculptor. I'm not the biggest fan of Sculptor. I think Sculptor is okay, but I don't think it's OP like some people think, but it is definitely a fairly okay card that if you can fit in your deck, can do stuff. But yeah, outside of that, basically this deck is exactly what it looks like. Exactly how it plays, pretty much exactly the same. Stall, and then eventually you win the game with Shellfolks and Luxes. And Gnar really helps out too. Gnar can be a win con all on his own. Mostly just there to just be an annoying card, absorb removal, give some value with some Poke Sticks, maybe remove something if he turns into Mega Gnar. Pretty much the main reason why we play Gnar. Just so much value in that little guy. Next up though, what have we got? We got an archetype that I love. We're going to be looking at Galio next for the next champion. We're looking at Galio dragons. I love dragons. One of my favorite archetypes. Kind of sad it's not that played, but we're looking at dragons with Galio. So start off with 3 Shivanas, 2 Galios, 1 Aurelion Soul. I started with 3 Shivanas, 3 Galios, and then I thought to myself, I kind of want to play a random 1 of Aurelion Soul. Probably is wrong. It's honestly like a failing of mine. I just love Aurelion Soul too much, and I always like to put him at least as a 1 of in a lot of target decks that probably shouldn't run him. But I thought, well, the 3rd Galio is also expensive. Sure, Shield of Duran's a great spell, great champ spell, but I'll play the random 1 of Aurelion Soul because we can play Dragon's Clutch and try and find him that way. As for the rest of the deck, it's about what you'd expect with dragons, with some of the new dragons, like Mountain Drake. Mountain Drake is just fairly strong, good filler, just another good solid 5-mana card there. Screeching Dragon is the better dragon in the 5-mana slot, though. I'd rather just play more Screeching Dragons, but Mountain Drake is a solid second 5-drop. The other new card we have in this deck, I already mentioned it already, Shield of Duran, just such a good card. Great with Mountain Drake, great with Shivana, great with pretty much everything in the deck. And Petricide Broadwing. Petricide Broadwing is getting played over, I believe the name is Dragon Guard Lieutenant, the 2-mana 3/2 guy that gets Challenger if he beholds a card. Petricide Broadwing is just better Dragon Guard Lieutenant in my opinion. I hope I'm saying the right card. But the Broadwing is just better. Sure, you have to actually have some synergy with the Broadwing. You need some heals, maybe a Shield Duran, etc., etc. But it's just so much better than that 2-mana 3/2 with Challenger. And as for the rest of the deck, pretty much what you expect in a Dragon deck. Wounded White Flame might not be that good anymore, though, after the nerfs, but it's still just a solid 3-drop to fill out the deck, I would say. But you could consider Ruined Dragon Guard over it if you don't like Wounded White Flame anymore. But we have okay amounts of self-targeting stuff. Guiding Touch, Sharp Sight, Single Combat, Shield Durand, Concerted Strike. Also just a really good Wounded White Flame is just such a good target for Shivana, for her champ spell specifically. I believe it is Confront. So we like that too. Other cards you can play in this deck, Winds of War. Winds of War, I think, might have some potential in this deck. I just don't think I can fit it. I'd rather just... I think 5 strikes is all I want. The 6th strike you could potentially run. Could be a Judgment, a 3rd Concerted Strike, a Winds of War, a Strafing Strike. Up to you, but Winds of War with the Petricite stuff, Wounded White Flame, seems pretty solid. And it does help level up the Shivana as well, so that's kind of cute. But yeah, basically just dragons here. Not sure how good this is going to be. Might be a little too fair, which has always been Dragon's downfall, is it's always been a little too fair. Things like Star Shaping and Aurelion Soul Invokes are basically the most unfair thing they can do alongside Overwhelm from Dragon's Clutch. And Dragon's Clutch Overwhelm is basically how we win the game. But yeah, there are definitely flex spots here. You could remove the Aurelion Soul, put in the 3rd Galio, and if you do that, you get to remove Eclipse Dragon. Maybe put in Golden Aegis if you want that as well. So there's definitely some flexibility in the list. Now, the 3rd deck. What do we have? Well, the 3rd deck, we're going to be looking at what a lot of people think is the worst champion of the set. We're going to be looking at Udyr. Specifically, Udyr Swain, Scargrounds. Now, you might say, now, here's the thing. I think Udyr probably needs to go in a Scargrounds list. I don't know exactly what champion I want to pair him with, but I like Swain the most because you're doing a lot of damage to stuff with pings, Ram Stance, for example. And Swain does like the stances from Udyr. He likes the Regeneration stance. I can't remember the name of the stances that well. He likes, I think it's Wild Claw stance is the Overwhelm one. But yeah, he likes the Regen stance, the Overwhelm stance. So Swain likes him, and Ram stance helped level him up really quickly. This list, I'm not exactly sure how I want to put this list together, but this is what I've got so far. Probably going to go and put in a 3rd Troll Chant, cut something. I'm playing City Breaker in the list just because I really like that card. It's kind of a pet card of mine. Honestly, you can probably take it out and put in a third troll chant and take out the other city breaker for something else. In all honesty, I don't know what you would want, but something else could probably take it. Maybe a second shaman's call. But as for the rest of the deck, I think this is a pretty solid start for some kind of Udyr quote unquote control deck. But yeah, like basically it's a Scargrounds deck that doesn't have to draw Scargrounds, is how I'm looking at this deck. Sure, Bone Scryer really, really wants to draw Scargrounds, same with Ember Maiden, but the rest of the deck doesn't need Scargrounds that much. Hopefully Udyr's stances will carry them. I think our game plan is play the Vulpine Wanderer early to get a stance, and then turn 5 you can play Udyr. That way the stance would be 0 mana, so you can buff Udyr right away to actually give him a reasonable stat line for a 5-drop. That's how I'm looking at it. And if your opponent wastes removal on Udyr, honestly, you're fine with that because you're a Swain deck. You've got Leviathan Swain, and Scargrounds make some of these cards actual problems. For example, City Breaker and Bone Scryer both have relatively high health pools, which is one of the reasons why I like City Breaker in this list, because it has a high health pool for Scargrounds. But yeah, those cards can just become big. And if you have just one stance, whether from Udyr, the Wanderer, the Allseer, or Shaman's Call, you can give that big unit Overwhelm, which has always been one of the weaknesses of Scargrounds. The units get really, really big, but they just get chump blocked for ages until your opponent sets up their win con. As for the deck, though, and how to play it pretty much like any other Scargrounds deck. Mulligan for an early-ish curve, and then Scargrounds, and then go from there. But yeah, I like it. You get to play some of the powerful Noxus cards, basically Flonk and Scorched Earth, Leviathan and Swain. Whispered Words and City Breaker are the other two Noxus cards. They're not as strong, but I think Words is fine because you just want some card draw in this deck. Anyway, what do we have as number 4? I believe we have another Gnar deck. The deck for the aggro players, let's say you just don't care about all these new these new decks. You want to destroy some people, but you don't want to just be playing spider aggro or something. Well, here we go. Ziggs, Gnar, Burn? Question mark? I think that's how I would describe this. But yeah, Ziggs, Gnar, Burn. Only a couple of new cards in this deck, Teeny Dactyl and Gnar. Those are the only new cards in this deck, but this deck is pretty much already a thing. Ziggs, Poppy, Burn was a very, very powerful deck. Kind of got nerfed a lot. Stone Stackers got nerfed a bit. Poppy got just nerfed into the dust. Vandal City Mayor got nerfed. Still pretty strong cards. I think this deck is going to be good again, though. I think Gnar is just going to be able to carry this deck. We didn't really get any good new life gain cards too, or even AoE. We got some AoE in the form of Ram Stance, and I think a couple other cards where they're not that great. So I think a Ziggs Gnar Burn deck will be a solid tier 2 deck. Gnar is just going to be really tough to deal with. Gnar will give some more Pokey Sticks, which can turn into more Burn. If Gnar levels up and gets overwhelmed, that's just even more chip damage. Mayor, while it's not great anymore, still does discount a lot of the cards in this deck. Will discount Ziggs, will discount Gnar. So Mayor is still pretty strong, and you can find some late game multi-region units if you want to just go late a bit. But I think 3 Decimate, 3 Noxian Fervor is just going to be really, really good in the meta on day 1. But yeah, not much to talk about with this deck. It's your standard aggro list. You like aggro, you know exactly how to play this deck. You get on the board early, get some damage, get as much damage in with your units. Eventually, your opponent starts to stabilize, and then you just decimate them and kill them with Decimates and Noxian Fervors and Pokey Sticks. You could probably play Treasure Trash too. I considered a Treasure Trash as a 1 or even a 2 of in this deck. Similar to how Ari Lulu or just Yorlin Arms decks play. They sometimes just play a couple of Treasure Trash. Did I say Ari Lulu? Whatever. But yeah, Yorlin Arms decks like to play a couple of Treasure Trashes. I think a couple of Treasure Trashes have some merit in this list. I just think it'd be better just play more Burn Like, if you want, cut the poison dart and maybe maybe a mayor or a teeny dactyl if you want a second treasure trash as well. But for now, this is a good start. Go from there, fine tune it to your taste, and you'll have a fairly strong deck for day one. Now, what do we have as our fifth and final deck? Well, we actually have a deck that doesn't have any new champions in it, but I still can't wait to play it. We got Fiora Soraka. This deck actually has a lot of new cards because, well, Fiora is kind of a bad champion, but a lot of these new cards potentially give Fiora some life. Now, there's a lot of these Soraka decks that people are thinking of. I also have another deck that I'm not showing on today's video that I'm thinking of in my head. That's Soraka Galio that I want to play a lot of too. But I wanted to show off Fiora Soraka. A lot of people love Fiora and her whole kill 4 units, instantly win the game, win con. So I wanted to show off a Fiora deck today. We're not fully mono Fiora. I know some lists out there are full-on mono Fiora. They only play like Fiora, Yuumi, and Wounded White Flame. I don't think that's a good idea. I feel like you're just asking to get mini-morphed with that kind of game plan. So I have this list, which is, while it's not all in Fiora, so Fiora is a little easier to answer, and it's a little harder to win with the Fiora win con, we're cutting out, we're basically hedging our bets by playing things like Star Springs, Mountain Drakes, and Zenith Blade. So we can play Mountain Drake, play a Zenith Blade, that's a win con. Soraka, with all the cards she'll give us, win con. Star Springs, it's only a 2 of, still a win con though. But I think our main win con in this list will be Fiora. Single combat, Winds of Wars are fight spells. Winds of War is just also really good with the Mountain Drake as well. Also helps heal up your units too for the Star Springs and Soraka, so that's really nice as well. But I really like the list. You could consider also playing Golden Aegis just for more rallies. I'd rather just play more protection spells than any Golden Aegises, but there's definitely some cards to consider. Third Sharp Sight's something you could try and put in too, but I couldn't really fit it with all the spells I wanted to play. But you could try and put in the third Sharp Sight as well. Anyway, that is all 5 decks for day 1 of A Curious Journey. I hope it gave you some kind of inspiration. Maybe you actually like one of these decks that I talked about. I will be sure to actually have the deck codes down below in a pinned comment down in the comment section, so look for that if you actually want to see that. Anyway, though, that's going to be it for today's video. As I said, I hope you enjoyed it. I'd love to hear your opinions on these decks, whether you think some of them actually are good and have potential, and how you would improve them yourselves. I'm always curious. Anyway, though, if you just enjoyed the video as well, I'd love it if you could leave a like or a comment down below. Always helps out the channel. And if you guys want to keep up with the Legends of Runeterra content, you can always go and subscribe to the channel as well. Anyway, though, if you also want to watch me play some Legends of Runeterra, you can go and check me out over on Twitch, over at twitch.tv/Zenaton, where I stream pretty much every single day. Anyway, though, with that all said and done, thank you all once more for watching this video, and until I see you guys in the next one, bye!